Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this conversation. I can't tell you how much I look forward to working with you on this. When I was superintendent of schools in Denver, I spent a lot of time wondering why everybody in Washington was so mean to our teachers and to our kids. And what I've discovered, actually, is that they're not mean, at least when it comes to education, that everybody here is well-intentioned, and that there's a universal agreement that we really do want our kids to achieve. So that's good. We also know a lot of what works, and all of you have touched on things that work here and work in other places as well, and I've seen it. I know that the children in America's cities have the intellectual capacity to do the work we're asking them to do because I've spent a lot of time with them. So here's the question, but I'm not going to let you answer yet. The question is, what do you think are the biggest impediments to preventing these successes from scaling across our school districts and schools? Because as we sit here, let me just say first, when I became superintendent of schools, on the 10th grade math test that we administer, there were 33 African-American students proficient on that test and 61 Latino students proficient on that test. Fewer than 4 classrooms of kids proficient on a test that, if we're honest with ourselves, measures a junior high school standard of mathematics in Europe. In a district, by the way, of 75,000 children, in a city of 550,000 children. A 4th grader today, as we're sitting here today, is in a low-income neighborhood, low-income zip code, is already 2 or 3 years behind her peers. She has a 1 in 2 chance of graduating from high school and a 1 in 10 chance of graduating from college. I don't think anybody in the Senate would accept those odds for any of our kids or grandkids. In fact, probably we'd resign our seats and run home to make sure that wasn't what the outcome was going to be. So in view of all that, my question to you is, what is getting in our way to scaling the successes that we know we have in the United States of America? Start with you, Mr. Go ahead.
Senator, it's a very difficult question, and I have to say this. I feel a little like Ebenezer Scrooge. You are the one I fear the most, the last. I'm the son.
They put me here for a reason.
No. I'm the son of 2 teachers, one of whom went to the dark side to become a school administrator, like you. And my 94-year-old father, who was that, still calls me up and says, "What do you in the business world know about teaching and running a teaching system?" And we've had long discussions about it, and we've thought about it a long time.
Mr. Castellani, I spent about half my career in the business world and then half doing this other stuff, and it probably means I don't know much about any of it.
That's all right. I'm sure it's the contrary. One of the things that strikes me that is very difficult is the contrast between how the rush to implement the best practices, the most innovative practices, the most successful practices is a basic innate operating circumstance in the business world and is not in a lot of other worlds, including education. Because in the business world, you don't have those kind of impediments. They tend to be just resource limited or time limited, because in order to be competitive, you have to adopt them. And I think the difference is because the reward structure is very, very different. And that is, if you adopt very rapidly the best practices in the business context, in the economic context, the presumption is you will be rewarded because you'll get more customers, you'll have higher margins, you'll be more profitable, your shareholders will result in more return for your shareholders. We don't have a way to translate that within the education system, and I think that, in part, is why people aren't rushing to do what we do in this other sector regularly.
Mr. Van Roekel. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Butt. I'll just go right down the table here.
Thank you.
As long as the chairman will let us.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
3 reasons. 1, general apathy, which is due to the culture that I mentioned. You had a big crowd for the Academy Awards Sunday night. teacher event, education event draws a big yawn. It's not sexy. And we're nationally overconfident. So that's one. Second is that the establishment has moved away from the public schools, either through multiple districts, which achieve de facto segregation, or having their kids in private schools. And in Texas, we have 5 million kids, nearly 10% of the national student group. 4.6 million of those are in public school. Other 400,000, which include much of the affluent and voters and the people that influence the politicians, are in private schools. So we've lost the leadership of the establishment, whatever it's worth, good or bad, and that's a matter of debate, to the public schools. And third, parents lose interest after their kids graduate from school. Parents and grandparents aren't interested in the schools anymore. They're opposed to raising taxes, but they really don't care about the schools. Those would be my 3 reasons that it's difficult to penetrate and get change, to elect good people to school boards and to elect state legislators and leaders that really care about education.
Senator, I would say number one, it's turnover. Oops, excuse me. Senator, I would say number one, it's turnover. And especially in our high-need schools, the turnover of staff and of principals and superintendents, it's impossible to have an integrated, well-thought-out plan that continues on for such a long enough time to really impact it.
By the way, I completely agree with your idea about having people come early for a week or two, parents and teachers, sorry.
A second thing is that too often a new culture or environment is created and it's personality driven. And when that personality leaves, so does the whole plan, and a new one comes in. And so it's impossible as a faculty member, it's a new reading program, it's a new math program, it's a new discipline program, it's new this, and we never just sit down and put in place. And the third thing I'll say is that we tend to focus on activities that we think will change the system instead of going at a systemic approach and really looking at coming up with that common purpose of what we're trying to achieve. I think that's where business has an advantage over us. They know what it is they're trying to achieve in their enterprise, and we don't talk enough about that. And so what happens is somebody says, oh, look, this school's doing well, and they have uniforms. Let's put uniforms in this school. They have no idea why they have uniforms, the discussion about what it is they were trying to achieve. So that's why I talk so much about collaboration. And one of the things that happens in successful places, Syracuse, New York, where Say Yes to Foundation came in and they're changing a whole district, they do memorandums of understanding so that the management, the school board and the union all sign on to that. So when one of the big 3 players changes, they can't suddenly go off in a new direction. There may be better ideas, but you have to come back and say, together, let's decide if there's a better place. Those are my 3 best impediments.
Mr. Chairman, one last final thought, and I would just stitch together what Mr. Van Rokel just said with what Mr. Castellani just said, and this, you can put this in the for whatever it's worth category, but I do think there is enormous reform fatigue that goes on in these school districts, and part of it is because we haven't applied the approach of continuous improvement that you would think of in the business world. I think it's very important for us to keep that in mind, because I think there is a lot that our school districts could gain from a continuous improvement approach in our teachers and our kids. And Mr. Budd, I would just say I completely agree with your observation, and I think that we as a country are going to rue the day unless we think about the children that are living in poverty in the United States, no matter who we are, as our own children. This is the next generation of Americans, and we are not going to be able to compete in the 21st century if we don't address these issues. The path to doing that runs right through the urban school districts of the United States. So thank you for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me go over.